made proposals to us. They too are concerned about funding. They made proposals to us that they want to raise funding on their own if we can provide certain guarantees to finish the roads that they are embarking on. And so we're waiting for Ministry of Finance to respond to those proposals because we don't decide financial issues. So I think that I'm going there now, sir. I'm going there, sir. Now, compensation, I think the chairman has appropriately summed up. Well, that's, excuse me, sir. If you permit me, sir. If you permit me, sir, some of the problems that we are having first with compensation is that they are, to put it mildly, they are inflated whenever it's a federal project. They are inflated, and I can't absolve anybody. I'm sorry. So, but in instances where we have paid, what we get is that the real beneficiaries of the compensation come back to us and say they received only 2,000 or they received only 50,000. There is an interchange of agents, attorneys, lawyers, unfortunately, so estate valuers in between, who it seems, and community leaders, who it seems. So, in one instance now, I put our foot down because in this case, compensation was in the agreement for the loan. But I've said, we are not paying through any third party. Let all the beneficiaries go and open bank accounts. We'll pay into that account. I've already been accused now of denying them their legitimate income. The lawyers, the estate valuers, and the attorney. And I said, well, we have no obligation to third-party contracts. If we pay the beneficiary, let them pay you for work you have done for them. So that's our position. Now, who solves the problem? Let me give the Bayelsa example. First of all, it is clear that Land Use Act vests land in the state. It is clear that it is the person who acquires the land who is obliged to pay compensation. The power of acquisition is not in the federal government, it is in the state governor. Whether it is exercised today or was exercised 30 years ago. So, ordinarily, the state governor is obliged to pay that compensation. It's not whether he has money. But there are so many other ways to deal with this. We believe that if the states get involved, senators get involved, House of Rep members get involved, these are the people who elected you. Federal government, my own view, the federal government is not coming to carry away their land. We are just passing through to provide life-changing infrastructure for them. In some cases, they would even say, take free or take at a reduced sum. Pay for only the crops. The states will be able to pay for crops. But it is other things where they will suddenly go and put a shrine overnight once they hear that the award has been made, or they will illegally build. So we have these instances. Governor Kaduna is helping us resolve some of them. Governor Bayelsa is the example I will cite, and I think is the outstanding example for all other states. In the road to Yenegua, he just said, look, leave it to me. I've seen the assessment of compensation. I'm not going to pay. I'll go and solve it with my people. And when I went there about a month ago, the people have said, continue to build. We have no problem anymore. We won't disturb the contractor again. In Abia, the section of the Enugu Port Harcourt, we had a problem. We wanted to do a trailer park as part of the road, which was designed. And the communities, those who are taking compensation, and some people who said they were not going to give their land, now went back together to court. I called the honorable member in charge of that constituent, and I wrote a letter to the governor. Within a week, they met with them. The matter has been resolved, and they said we can come and continue our work. Our mandate from the Federal Executive Council is that any state that does not solve the compensation issue, then we should stop the work. That's our mandate. So, well, Governor Susu, I'm happy that there's good news from Benue, even though Senator Sekibo does not acknowledge the work that the federal government is doing in Bodo Boni and Enugu Port Harcourt, but for the benefit of the National Assembly and this thing, every time I go to Bodo Boni, there is an engagement for me with history. That's the Ogoni land, first of all, but that's also the land of King Jaja. And for the first time in the history of Nigeria, you can now drive through. We haven't finished the work, but that was a place where for centuries the only way across was through the creeks. That is progress, and that is a project of almost 200 billion naira. Yes, sir. 4 bridges, 4 main bridges, 9 small bridges connecting the island of Bonny to the mainland of Port Harcourt. It has never happened before. It's in River State.
It's the most challenging engineering job.
You should go and see, sir.
We would like to go and see.
You should go and see, sir. So, it's a tax credit, sir. Every tax credit program is government money.
Yes, we could have taken the money instead.
So,
We could have taken the money.
anyway, let me. Yes, I just want to respond to EB Bridge to say that what is going on there now is piling work, and bridge construction really is substructure work. We had initial issues relating to compensation. I think they've been overcome. So, and the more financing we get to the contractor, the more the speed of the work. Senator Borfis, the Ipele to Okene road is in the proposals for 2022, so we will execute it. The Akure Itagbolu Ikere road, I understand that to be part of the Akure Ado-Ekiti road. We are still pursuing the financing with the African Development Bank. I am in touch with the governor of Ekiti on that. We have submitted all the documents that they ask us to submit. The reason the contractor can't do much is that the mobilization we can pay under the budget is not significant. So, but we keep urging them to at least try and do some remedial work. As soon as we have financing, they will roll out plant and equipment. To Senator Oluyemi Tinubu, we notice the potholes that you speak about. I've asked, where is Engineer Dewey? He's out. Okay, that is, yeah. They are coming up, even all the interchanges, all the ramps from Simpson, Adeniji Adele, Oroshoki. I've asked them to go and undertake a complete overview. No, they will get there. That's a continuous maintenance job. The major work that has been done on the bridge is the expansion joints and the bearings.
Not working, but to thank you on the work with the partnership with Dangote, and I know it will soon be completed, but it has eased a lot of traffic on the road. Thank you very much, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I think I will hand it back. the train service was out of operation, immediately we called the contractor to accelerate work on remedial work so as to provide relief to commuters.
Senator Leka Mustafa and Senator Odi.
Go then to page 5, the 2022 budget proposal for 450 billion, 29 million, 257,670 naira was proposed for the Ministry of Works and Housing and its parastatals for capital, personnel, and overhead estimates in 2022 appropriation bill. The breakdown of the works sector is shown in paragraphs A, Can I continue? So I'm on page 6. The breakdown of the proposals are shown in paragraphs A, B, and C, showing the capital budget for works and housing in the sum of 382,849 billion, and that of the parastatals, some of who are represented here, giving the total as shown in the subparagraph there. Then we'll go to subparagraph B, the overhead proposals for the main ministry and the parastatals, totaling 16.885 billion. And personnel costs for the ministry and its parastatals totaling 15.050 billion. Some of the questions that were asked during the 2021 budget defense are also answered partly as I explain our plan for 2022, like the question that was asked about how we chose which projects. There are broad thematic objectives for our roads. First of all, so some of our objectives, as I've alluded to, was to ensure energy security, which I've explained. Some of it, in order to support business, is to ensure that farmers and those in agric can evacuate their produce. So you have roads that target places where large farms exist and states that produce agricultural produce. You also have roads that evacuate ports and roads that connect international borders. And I think it was some of those roads that distinguished Senator Wamako was alluding to. And we have them across the length and breadth of Nigeria, or in all zones. Because our country on the western axis shares a boundary with Republic of Benin, from Sokoto all the way to Badagry. And on the eastern boundary, we share border with Chad, Cameroon, right down, and at the northern boundary, we have Niger, Benin. So currently we have 854 highway contracts. So let me again clarify that. Contracts are different from projects. A project is a road, but it can have different contracts. And so if there are different contractors, the contract numbers are different. So these are the contracts. The total number of projects are about 795. Projects, yes. And that includes roads, bridges, and so on. Out of these 854 contracts, we categorize them in paragraph B based on their funding mechanism. So we have the Presidential Infrastructure Development Fund, which I've explained, so I won't go into it in any more detail. We have the Sukuk, which I've also explained at the request of Mr. Chairman. I won't go into it. But they target basically dual carriage highways on the A1 to A9. The list is in Annexure 5. Then we have the roads under the tax credit scheme. The list of those roads is in Annexure 6. Then we have projects funded for multilateral loans, such as the China Exim Bank loan, which we provide for counterpart funding. The list of those roads is in Annexure 7. Now, one of those roads is the Makurdi to the 9th mile, which I think distinguished Senator Kweremadu inquired about. We have done everything that we should do as a ministry. What is left now is the signing of the loan agreement. And the problem, I am told, is that Finance and Ministry of Justice need to take certain steps in order to meet the compliance thresholds that National Assembly has urged with regard to protection of Nigeria's sovereign this thing. So those are what I expect. So that's why we're waiting for the loan to be. No, sir. Well, the part that has started is Kefi, Akwanga to Makurdi.
Exactly.
That's section 1. That's about 220 kilometers.
Yes.
Then there is a section from Makurdi to 9th mile.
9th mile.
That's
the one that yet to start?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Because we haven't got the...
Because last year, we had lump sum amount over 55 billion naira.
Yes.
Which they were not able to utilize.
Well, not exactly so, sir. I will.
Okay,
see,
go ahead. I don't want to disturb your presentation.
So, I am on page 8 now, paragraph 12. Just as Mr. Chairman said in his speech, that we need to give priority to critical projects that are like 60% and above completed to ensure their full completion within 2022. I think there's a meeting of minds there, and that's what we have sought to do in paragraph 11, because as you can see, there is a disparity between what we need and what is in the budget envelope. This compels us, therefore, like rational individuals, to make choices when what you need is more than what you have. And the choices we have made is in Annexure 8. Mr. Chairman also, and the committee also asked us to identify what our problems and challenges are. We have dealt with them in paragraph 12 of the proposal at page 8. Essentially, it is funding, funding and more funding. And just to mention, Mr. Chairman, that the funding support that we need is not just on the capital side. It is also on the overhead side. Yes, sir. Every project requires some sort of governance, supervision, travel, inspection, and the men and women who do this job have to travel, have to buy vehicles and all of that. So we have had an exponential increase in our responsibilities without the corresponding increase in the tools to do it. Also, if I may just say this, every time we have to appear here, depending on which committee it is, we are asked to produce these documents in copies of 60s, in some places 20, some places 30. This puts enormous pressure on all our tools, from scanners to photocopiers, and also a demand for materials. This paper continuously have to be put in production, and those are places where we will need some support as well to be able to provide the support to deliver on the capital side. So, Mr. Chairman, distinguished senators, that is the highlight of our proposals for 2022, sir.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Senator Leka Mustafa first, because he didn't ask a question.
Secretary, you asked questions already.
I've allowed you to go now.
Chairman, distinguished colleagues, Honorable Minister.
And indeed, my own senator, Senator Oluremi Tinubu, has been First Lady, and many other, and we know the power that comes from the throne, comes from the women. So there's a lot of experience, and it is clear from the posers that the chairman has posed on behalf of the committee, and also the questions and the understanding that have come also even in this. Let me thank you very much for all the kind words. I cannot take credit for any success here. I think all of the credit first belongs to the President, the Vice President, and all my colleagues in the Cabinet, without whose support no memo will pass, and also by extension to members of the National Assembly, in both arms, in both houses of Parliament, with whose cooperation we have been able to soldier on. The challenges cannot be surmounted without collaboration. And I think that collaboration has clearly shown that some progress can be delivered if we work together. And we are in a place today where we can say something is moving forward, and we want to accelerate the speed. Of course, as head of that ministry, it is an enormous privilege, but all the hard work that goes on in that ministry belongs to the permanent secretary and all the directors who work night and day, Saturday and Sunday, dead into the night, and all I just have the privilege to do is to receive the finished work. So to all the directors, the credit for all of this really belongs to you, and I hope that you will not relent in your effort as we go into the really sharp end of our business in 2022. too. Mr. Chairman, the questions you have asked first summarize really the problems that we face as a country today. There's a lot that we have left undone, and this has nothing to do with government or party. We just left a lot of things undone. Our competitors in Asia and in parts of Europe have invested more rapidly over the last 3 decades in building infrastructure, and we just must play catch up. And we don't have all of the resources. And this is the debate we have about whether to borrow more or not to borrow, and whether to invest today for the benefit of the future generation or to leave the future generation to come and do it by themselves at tomorrow's money. It's a choice. It's a choice that we must debate and build consensus around. Should we spend today's money to invest for the future generation to come and inherit? So, but that's another matter. So, I thank you very much, and let me just speak to this thing. We are constrained by the fiscal responsibility paper and the medium-term framework. And once that is cast in stone and approved, there is very little wiggle room. And therefore, everybody gets an envelope. Go and do what you can with it. And within that envelope, as you all know, there's a huge deficit already to finance capital, which comes to you by way of borrowing plan. So it is within that household that we have to play. So it will be helpful if we can have something of an emergency fund to deal with failures that happen each season anyway. It happens in Europe. After winter, all their roads break up and they have to be fixed. So, and it happens here too. After the rainy season, the failures in the road then show up, and we must be able to respond. So that kind of thing will be helpful, and I think we have dimensioned the amount when we had that meeting with you. You say how much?
45 billion.
About 45 billion for emergency repairs. The big elephant in the room is, where will the financing come from? Yes, Mr. Chairman, it sounds interesting. You provide an option whether to mop up fronts. The question I ask is, from where? From what is not enough? So I would like us to have a so, because you see, sir, there are many views to it. Yes, we want to build one road, right? But what about the contractor who also has just started and we are owing him? Because infrastructure is not just about the finished product. It is about distributing wealth in an economy. So if we mop up one side and we say only these senators, pardon me for using the analogy, are the contractors we will pay, and we don't pay the side where I see Gabriel Souza is already shaking his head. So what happens? Have we provided the greatest good to the greatest number possible? And I'm sure that these are things that will provide more assistance as the budget process comes up, working maybe with Ministry of Finance to see whatever is possible again. But we need really to provide for this. We can't provide, for example, for emergencies, because it's going to rain again next year. Communities are going to be washed up. Bridges, abutments will be washed up. People will need relief instantly. I think we had a problem like that in Owerri this year, and a few other places, I think in Bauchi. Last year was Kebbi. So, and we have to respond. And if we don't provision for it, then we're in a very difficult place. There are no easy answers, but we have to make choices. And as you appropriately say, we have over 400 billion liability, 350 billion in the envelope. What that does first is not enough, but it keeps the supply chain going. Because the construction industry is driven by the supply chain below it. Those who supply sand, those who operate quarries, those who supply reinforcement, those who supply lubricants. So even if you are owing 10 naira and you are able to pay 7 naira, the contractor continues. You create a credit system in the economy. It will be nice to pay up everything. But what must never happen is a shutdown between payment and supply. Then it freezes the whole value chain completely. And we lose the objective, which is to create prosperity. In terms of Abuja, the Sukuk, you asked me, well, I have not yet received a report from Debt Management Office of what the final number in the Sukuk this year is. Our team have been having meetings with them, and I'm sure that we will have a final indication soon enough. Whatever the case may be, the Sukuk is another option outside of what the budget provides. But what has happened, again, is that we started with 25 roads with 100 billion, I think in 2017 or 2018. At the request of our people, the number of roads increased from 25 to 44. But that's almost 100% increase. But the Sukuk increment has been from only 100 to 162. So what you then find out is that the Sukuk that was supposed to be a special intervention fund is almost being disaggregated and dissipated over a larger area and spreading thin and endangering the larger objective. For me, the Sukuk as it is should just be targeted to a very limited number of rules so that we can see final delivery. Because clearly the budget, as we all see, is insufficient to finance all what we have committed to.
Honorable Minister, at this juncture, this 400 billion naira liability you have of contractors' money, can the money from NSIA be used to wipe up this debt?
Okay, so let me go to NSIA.
Yeah.
The monies that NSIA has are first some amounts that are savings and investment as an investment agency, which you created it to be by an act of parliament. The monies that are dedicated under the Presidential Infrastructure Fund, as I understand it, are dividend income from, I think, our investments in the NLNG that the NSIE manages, and largely the recoveries from the Abacha era, which was released under certain protocols and agreements. Some of the protocols and agreements was that it must be used only for specific projects. Not just infrastructure, specifically named. So in releasing the monies, we agreed to use it for partly, I think, the Mambila, the East-West Road, the Abuja-Kanu, Second Niger, and Lagos-Ibadan. So we can't go outside of that agreement that we have signed. So that's my answer. Why the delay? Well, again, you know, there is a lot of checks and balance, and I've shared some of them with you. In a way that I have said that we have over-legislated ourselves almost into numbness, and we have inflicted processes on ourselves that are not consistent with the emergency we are in. I give you an example. So there are certain protocols. When we certify that the work has been done, we provide evidence and all that. We wait until they now have their own consultancy who go and check again.
Certify what you have certified.
So, and that process, I am not in control of it. So we wait. I've given you the example also about payments, where payments up to 250 million or so, 250 million, after the Ministry of Finance, where the Office of the Accountant General is, has released monies to us based on an agreed list of those who should be paid, now demand that we should send back payments up to 250 million for them to vet again before we can pay. So it's all part of transparency, and so we have to follow. So those are some of the challenges. Now, sir, with regards to, I think I've done the Sukuk and all of that. With regards to the, no, please. NNPC, the amount to be deployed is 621 billion 237 million and some fraction, not 612. And it is not to be deployed once. It is to be deployed over a period of years. And it is from tax liabilities under the tax credit scheme. That's the first thing I want to say. The second thing I want to say is that the government objective in this second term crosses 9 areas of ministerial mandates, such as macroeconomic stability, national security, energy security, transport infrastructure. Now, this intervention responds to energy security and transport infrastructure. And why is it so? You will be aware that almost on a yearly basis for the last few years, there is a gridlock around Niger State during the rainy season. Suleja, Mina, Bida, Lambata, it's just gridlocks. One of the reasons for the gridlock, apart from the condition of the road, is that some of Nigeria's largest petroleum storage depots are in Mina and Suleja and around there. So, in order to achieve the capacity to continue to supply petroleum products, those roads need to be fixed. So that was the reason for the intervention by NNPC. And it has reached the stage where, it's becoming, then the trucks move into state roads, and sometimes in the year, the Niger State government then shuts down its own roads. And so in order to solve that, NNPC came up with this solution. And then they chose some other roads across the geopolitical zone. So if you look at the list, most of the roads there, Niger State has the most. But it is not for the benefit of Niger, it is for the benefit of Nigeria. And in fixing that infrastructure, we deal with ministerial mandate number 4, which is to provide transport infrastructure, because everybody can then traverse these roads. In getting the approval of council, Mr. Chairman, distinguished senators, these were the same questions that we had to respond to, because there are NNPC depots in every state, and everybody was wondering, why did you choose this one in this zone? Why didn't you choose that one? As late as yesterday, I was being asked, why didn't you choose Ikorodu to Shagamu? The Mosimi depot in your state is there. And I said, we don't dictate to the people who want to invest in the tax credit scheme, just in the same way that we couldn't dictate to the Dangote Group when they chose Kanu Western Bypass, Dikwa Gamboru Road, or Papa Lanto Road, or the Alps Road. The important thing is that those roads become less problems of financing for us to deal with. and we see a pathway to their completion. So these are 21 roads that we know now that the funding challenges have been dealt with. Now, with regard to the question about multiple sources of funds, first of all, they are not necessarily multiple. As I said, for example, even the PIDF, there are some things we can't do with the PIDF. For example, if we want to buy vehicles, or if we want to do pre-construction work or inspection work, or people have to go on tour, we can't charge it to that fund. They won't pay it. And if the engineers don't go to site to inspect, no certificate will be produced. So we still have to make some budget. So when you look at the amounts there, they are nominal compared to the real amount to execute the work. Then also with the Sukuk, if you see, what you see is, oh, it's a Sukuk road. But when you go to the details of it, you will see that maybe a 100-kilometer road, what is funded in the Sukuk may be a section, a target. So whatever is not covered, we still make some nimble provision. So we are not more overlayering, if you understand me. Then we are hoping that if we can increase the scope of the Sukuk, some of these things that are not needed and they can accommodate more, then we'll drop them off as we go on. Let me speak to the concerns about Christmas that you and Senator Otazi raised. We have already started the Ember Month plan, which is the end of year plan, and this is one of our considerations. If our plans work, and I hope that they will, you will see some relief across all the major road networks. We know how people move towards the end of the year. So even if we can't build all the roads to completion, our contractors, we have met with them, they are mandated to provide standby staff to continue to make remediation over Christmas. We also will do, and you will see also FRSC involved in that process too, to evacuate breakdowns and so on and so forth. And we will reverse the process again on the 1st of March when we start planning rainy season plan, because that's another movement of its own entirely. So on the roads that you speak to, Second Niger Bridge, we hope to finish Second Niger Bridge next year. Whether it is Q2 or Q3, I am not yet in a position to tell you. Some of the more informed engineers here will tell you that project finance, project management, sometimes you can sleep, sometimes you can gain time. We lost time last year because of COVID. We are still complying with COVID guidelines, NCDC rules. So it's controlling the number of people at a work site, slow down for cleaning of machines periodically after every few hours, which was not the case before. But I am able to tell you, sir, that by the end of the first quarter of next year, the remaining link between the bridge span on the deck would have been fully completed, and you can walk on either side of it from one end to the other. From the Owerri interchange at the Obosi side, there is 7 kilometers of initial access road work to be done. When I went there about 3 months ago, they have fully asphalted 2 kilometers. The entire sand filling for the 7 kilometers completed. So all they're waiting for is for settlement and this thing so that they can do the work. I'm sure they would have made more progress. I'm sure they would have made more progress with protocol by going straight to the issues raised by distinguished Senator George Sekibu. And the first is to point out that yes, we understand the importance of the Aba-Onne road, and indeed that is a major petrochemical hub, and it extends, as I've said, to the Bonny Island, which I have spoken about. But the interesting thing is that that is part of the east-west route, which was transferred during the previous administration tenure to the Ministry of Niger Delta. It was not transferred by President Buhari. And it was transferred, I understand it from reports at that time, from the agitations that came from those who felt concerned that a specialized ministry for the Niger Delta will solve the problems of the Niger Delta. The jury is now out about how well thought or otherwise that decision was. But we inherit assets as we do liabilities. I am able to speak a little, because it is no longer under my ministry. I'm able to speak a little because we are providing support for the Ministry of Niger Delta. And I know that one of the things that there has been an approval, for the release of certain funds for this project, but it can't take off because of compensation issues. Now,
please go out. If you don't have a seat, kindly go out. We don't want the police to draw you out.
The works that needs to be done there now requires, because some people have taken positions, and if I recollect the meeting I had with Governor Akpabio recently, to insist on the existing alignment to do the repairs will require very, very extensive demolitions in the order of several dozens of billions. So they've chosen a less intrusive alignment, and that requires the relocation of 1 or 2 petrol filling stations, and the owners of those businesses have to compensate it. So I think just about 2 weeks ago, our ministry signed off the compensation valuation, because I was concerned about the amount recommended about compensation, and we had a meeting, and our people had to go back to site to validate that those assets were actually there, photograph and document them as a basis for making the valuation that we have made. So I'm sure that within the next few weeks, you will see some activity return to that area, especially in the dry season. Always be mindful also that your part of the country, rivers, cross rivers, Akwa Ibom and all of those places are in the rainforest of Nigeria. There's a lot of rainfall there during the year, and it's not very, very easy to do construction work. The other point I think that you alluded to was the tax credit scheme by the NNPC, and that there was a zonal disparity. I have tried to explain earlier on, the fact that a road is in one place does not mean that it belongs to the people of that place. My understanding, with respect, is that the people of wherever it is situated are just trustees for the benefit of the entire Nigeria. All Nigerians who need to traverse through that territory will use the road. So that's the first thing. The second thing, as I explained earlier on, we have 9 ministerial mandates. One of those ministerial mandates is to ensure energy security across Nigeria. And that includes petroleum products as well as gas products. So, for example, another ministry in the same government is building the Ajaokuta Kaduna Kano gas pipeline. That doesn't mean that it's for the people of Kano. It's going to supply gas across Nigeria. So I think that the temptation, as appealing, as politically expedient it might be, to begin to regionalize development and senatorialize it and constitutionalize it, I think that we are now national officers, all of you here. They are national officers. And I think that we should begin to talk more about the integration of our country. So the point to make, sir, let me make this final point in answer to that point. Calabar, Itu, Udupani is one of the places where we have gridlock every year. Just as we have on Auchi Okene, and just as we used to have on Cham Numan. We have made some progress with Cham Numan. And so Calabar Udupani now qualifies this year. It's an 81-kilometer road, but it's inside water. And how much is going there in this NNPC funding? 172 billion. I think we should just be happy that we have a solution to that problem. I think we should be happy. And then whatever remains, we will find solutions. As the chairman is saying, that there are still other problems. Let's go and solve them. This is 21 down, more to go. That's the way we see it. Senator Sankara here has talked about every year 300 million, every year 300 million. If you left us, every year I've come here to say, can we stop new projects? I've said that here every year. But everybody wants a road to a senatorial district. So as we put it, where is the money going to come from? So these are some of the problems. You heard, now we will soon see many projects from Parliament in the ministry. They will tell us that if we don't execute it, we are not implementing the budget. So for a 16, 20 billion road, first we put 100 million. Go and award it. I've complained here about the number of roads against the resources. So if we had our way, really. But we don't live in a world where we will have our way. So just for information on Senator Sankara, that road is now in the 2022 Sukuk proposals. So I hope the senator is listening now. He's now in 2022 Sukuk. So, but that is now in the hands of DMO. So I don't know what answer Senator Sekibo wants, but he can go away with this. Your people will see that you have made a very compelling case for them. So, Auchi, Okpila, Okene, what we're trying to do now, we inherited that problem, and we see that our efforts should improve. And I've asked the team to do a total evaluation because we have 4 contractors or so there. And each one always comes to ask for augmentation. When we start, then the next one comes. So we say we want, prices have changed from when all of this was done. So what we want to do now is do a total review of what is needed to complete the road. Even when it was awarded before we came, some parts were left unawarded. So we want to take the whole picture, dimension the full size of the problem. While work is going on the air side, you see that there's progress on some other sides. Dimension the whole thing and then come back to you to say, look, what can you do for us in terms of a special fund dedicated to that route to solve the problem. I think that's the way to problem solving instead of just biting and cheering at it. But the problem is always pronounced during the rainy season. By the end of the rainy season now, We will move in, we will stabilize it, it will be motorable through to the dry season until we start our next year's rainy season planning again, and we will make provision for it. We understand the challenges that commuters face, but we sympathize with them and will continue to offer our best to make it easier. If Ijebu-Ibadan Road 2020, what has happened, as you say, it was awarded in 2010. We were not here then. Maybe Senator Ali McKenna and I think Governor Susan was not here too at that time. So, and the chairman, I believe. So, essentially, that was the period when the budget we met for Nigeria's roads was 18 billion. So it is understandable that a contractor would not have been paid between 2010 and 2014. And so if it wasn't paid, as I've said earlier, contractors depend on their suppliers. If the suppliers are not paid, there is no supply of construction material. What CCC has done is to, as it were, abandon the project, and I think that we are looking at two options, either to revive the project, review the rates, and augment it if they're still interested, or entirely to terminate it, which is a longer process, and re-award it. But those are the two options we look at. So that's why we keep something in the budget to enable us comply with procurement compliance that says that we cannot award a contract that is not budgeted for. That's the reason why we keep it there. In terms of whether the money has been touched, in terms of whether the money has been touched, the budget is a proposal, it's not money. So if there is no work done, no certificates raised, there will be no payment, even if we have the money. It follows automatically, and I think that's it. Shagamu Ogijo Road, the positive news I have to share is that it is in the Sukuk for 2022. But the point I want to make, sir, and this applies not just to this road, but all the other roads that members are concerned about, is that we have to make choices. But unfortunately, it is very, very difficult to build consensus. So I wish all the senators and the members of the House of Rep in Ogun State and those in Lagos will come to one agreement that this is their priority project and just provide the funding for it. Then let's go and finish it to the exclusion of others, perhaps. But again, but for this one road, somebody has said, I think it was Senator Utazi who said, well, the road we did goes to one senatorial district, it doesn't come to his own. So we are damned if we do, we are damned if we don't. But nonetheless, I thank you very much for your patience, for your support, and for your cooperation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Honorable. We are going to take the agencies that are under the Ministry of Works and Housing. And I want the Honorable Minister to leave now and the Permanent Secretary so that we can deal with the agencies. As I promise you, we will do our very best to see what can be done in order to increase the budget of the Federal Ministry of Works. We believe that the road sector is so vital that it needs to be given the deserved attention. And we will do our very best to ensure that that attention is given by the leadership of the National Assembly. And immediately we get the response of the leadership, we will expeditiously treat the budget for 2022 submitted by you. And if there is anything that needs further clarification we will call on you or your directors or your permanent secretary to come forward and give us. You have submitted virtually all the documents we asked for, and we are very glad with them. I went through them copiously 2 days ago, and I discovered them to be very, very useful. The only thing is that some of the projects that are under tax credit are now also under budgetary provision, particularly the ones that are taken over by the defunct NNPC. If you have up to about 4 to 5 billion naira on a project that will be taken over by NNPC, it is only fair that you allow other projects to benefit from the budgetary allocation, since the NNPC is going to pay for every certificate that is raised. So maybe when we are doing line by line item, you may see that the money that is provided under those roads or those projects that are taken over by tax credit will be moved to other critical projects that are important. By so doing, we'll be able to cover more ground. And a road project that costs 30 to 35 billion naira, you have only 100 million naira provided in the budget. There's no way you can make progress. Instead of allowing that money, why don't you move it to a place where it will make impact? And then when we finish with that one, then we'll come back to the other one and take it over. That is the thinking of the committee. And I hope the ministry will also understand what we want to do. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, that is the second one in terms of where there are very nominal provisions, not enough to move them to places where we're almost finishing projects. I agree with the logic behind it. My only concern in doing so is to ensure that there are no outstanding liabilities to those contractors, so that if they have done any work, we don't remove the little provision from which they will be paid. Some of them borrow money to do our work. So I will suggest that we look at those things, provide the list of them for you, so that at least you will not have acted without information. With regard to the first one, which is the tax credit, we've already seen the possibility in the ministry, but because we could not predetermine when FEC would approve, which was just 2 days ago, we couldn't incorporate it into the documents that you have. So again, the thinking is welcome. My sense is that you should allow us to make the proposals based on the information that we have, so that you can then implement your thinking with input from us. If that is fine, you should get that, I think, maybe by Monday or Tuesday. So that your decision is guided by input from us. We agree. It's just so that before things move haphazardly away, we show you our proposals. If it agrees, then we will have a meeting of mind that this is where we should deploy them. If it doesn't meet with your own plans, then we can sit down and say, look, which is the choice to make here?
Okay, I think by next week we should meet over this and discuss and find a way
sir.
out.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. So once again, thank you very much. I wish you all the best. Or the Federation. We'll take over. We'll take over. 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock.
Mm.
Well, that's a fair thing.
Huh?
Haka taya su tafi ba kafin ka tafi.
to zan bata tun sai sun tafi sai sun tafi bari in ban fara da shi ko
Ba zai zo nan ba.
to ya kamata ya zo